I thought I'd work through some exercises that might be called pre-Pilates exercises or foundational or essential level exercises. And they are just that. They might seem outwardly a little bit smaller physically, but they're the foundational building blocks of all of the fancier exercises. So take it with a kind of a low ambition or an exploratory feel, and hopefully through that quieter approach where we don't need to get into big virtuosic shapes, we can connect to deeper places. I want you to start on your back, please. Knees are bent, soles of the feet are on the mat. And then once you're there, just use your hands to find your hip bones. These are bony landmarks right in the front of the pelvis. Once you've got them, slide your fingertips a couple inches towards your midline, towards your navel. And then when you press your fingertips down, you shouldn't feel anything bony. That's just all soft tissue now. With your fingertips there, so you can really feel what's going on, take a nice big breath in through your nose. And a nice big exhale through your mouth. We'll take a couple more like that, breathing in deeply. And exhale. Now as you continue with that breath pattern, try and create a flattening across those hip bones and underneath your fingertips. So the breath doesn't disturb the low belly much. There's going to be a little bit of sympathetic movement, but I'd like there not to be a big expansion and contraction underneath your fingertips. And then if you bring your attention to the exhales, as you breathe out, find the muscles you would use to stop peeing if you were in the middle of that action, and gently engage those muscles. And that should encourage the pelvic floor group to come on. Try and hold those muscles as you breathe in, and hold them or find them a little more actively as you exhale. They shouldn't be on that much, just enough to create some tone. Now you may have already noticed that under your fingertips, things feel just a little bit firmer. There's a little bit more muscular engagement. I'd like you to create even more firmness by feeling like you're drawing those two bony landmarks, the hip bones, towards each other. Now they don't really move towards each other, but that imagining may create even a little bit more excitement in those low belly muscles. Once you've found those two places, the pelvic floor and that sense of flattening by engaging your transverse abdominal wall, I'd like you to take your hands away from those hip bones and just place them down by your sides. Now keeping the engagement in the places we talked about, check in with your low back. Those low back muscles should be soft and relaxed right now. If you already feel like there's a little bit of tone creeping in back there, you're overworking the ideas. Maybe dial back that flattening or pelvic floor piece. It doesn't need to be a ton at this stage because you're not moving. Now as we continue to bring our attention to your low back, notice you may have no space under your low back between you and the mat. You may have a gap, as I do, because of my spinal curves. Everybody's different. We're going to play with those curves, but know that sensation in your body is what you should use as your guideline. It doesn't necessarily need to be in contact or not in contact to be correct in an exercise. So having established your regular curves, your neutral curves we'll call them, and having turned on some low-level abdominal stuff, I'd like you to bring your attention to your tailbone, the very base of the spine. On an exhale, reach that tailbone towards your heels, and in so doing, gently curl your low back towards the mat. And then inhale, release that away, back to regular version of you. Do that a couple more times. Exhale, curl and flex your low back into the mat. Inhale, release. So the action is a reaching away of the base of the spine and a curling between the legs. Keep playing with that. It's a little bit of wordplay, but I'd like you to avoid it feeling like a tucking action. So instead of thinking of initiating with the musculature in the front of your hips or with the bones of the pelvis, think instead that it's the spinal column, lengthening and then flexing down to the mat and releasing away. And as per the earlier discussion, you may find your back completely in contact with the mat or not. All depends on you, but I'd like you to find that lengthening curl. Do just one more of those, finding the curl, that gentle press in towards the mat, and then release back to your regular neutrals. Now check in. Hopefully your pelvic floor and that feeling of flatness in the low belly is still in play. Keeping that there, leave your pelvic girdle with your mind's eye for a moment and take the arms up towards the ceiling. Extend the elbows, the wrists, and the fingers, but then gently plug the upper arm and the back of the shoulder into the mat. Feel open across your collarbones. I'd like you from here to take your right arm over your head and your left arm down towards your hips. You're scissoring the arms. Take them through space in reverse. You find a tempo that works for you here. As one arm stretches overhead and then the other, encourage it to go as far towards the mat above your head as possible, but don't force that range to a place where maybe your ribs or that low back curve are affected. Take those easy movements of the arms through space as though you were moving through water. And we'll go for just another 2. And last 1. Finish with both arms up towards the ceiling. Hold right there. With the arms lifted, find that gentle curl of your low back into the mat. Continue that action going to roll your pelvis up into the air. Now once you're lifted there, I'd like to be able to draw a line from your underarm to your hip bone out through your knees, so a long lifted diagonal, and then soften and vertebra by vertebra melt back down towards the mat through that low back curl and to your neutral. Do a couple more there. Lengthen the base of the spine, scoop the guts in and up, and then roll up. And soften all the way down. And there's a couple possible breath patterns here. Let's maybe use an exhale as you roll up. And then as you breathe in and roll down, fill your low back towards the mat, maybe widening across the shoulder blades. As you continue to move through these ranges, notice we might have a tendency to wobble in the knees. Try and minimize that. You might want to lift your toes or roll to the baby toe sides of the feet. That's also a little bit of a fault in this one. Try and keep your 10 toes on, and there's even a little bit of a press, big toe to mat, to make sure your inner line is active. The next time you've curled up and lifted your pelvis into the air, hold there. Now, even though there's not a lot of movement with this next cue, I'd like you to feel like you're reaching the sphere of the pelvis away from your shoulder girdle, away from your head and neck. So there's a bit of length being created, and maybe your hamstrings come on more. Right arm opens out wide to the side. Exhale, breathe that arm back up. Inhale, left arm. And come up. Maybe you breathe in so big that that's what cues the arm to open up. So you're starting to cultivate this quality of movement where the breath leads, and then just a split second later, the body responds. And come up. Last one, left arm. And breathe that back. From this position, keep the pelvis lifted, but press your hands down into the mat. Resist the temptation to move your legs right now. Find a little bit more low belly. Find a little bit more of that flattening across your hip bones. And then again, check in. Your low back should be quiet-ish here. If it's feeling like it's going like crazy, squeeze your bum a little bit more and zipper up the abs in the front. Now, option number 1, you stay right here in stillness. Option number 2, lift your right leg to tabletop. Place it right back down to the mat where it started. Left leg lifts up and come down. Now, you're working to finesse your proprioceptive awareness in this. Your ability to feel where your pelvis is in space, even though it's not touching anything, like the mat to give you any feedback. Try to keep the pelvis still. And as you're lifting and lowering the one leg, you try and minimize the wobbles that might want to creep in. One last lift of your left leg, or enough that you feel even. And then with both feet on the mat, slowly roll down through your spine, all the way through that low back, and back to your neutral. Now sometimes, even beautifully supported in the front, there is a little bit of excitement that creeps into the back there. So hug your knees in, give them a gentle squeeze, and that should release any of that activation that was maybe starting into the lumbar. From this position, lower your feet down to the mat to that starting position we had. Place one hand on your sternum and the other hand on top of the first hand. Take a big breath in and you'll feel that sternum rise under your hands. As you exhale, feel the sternum soften and melt down, and you might even push it a little bit with your hands. Inhale again, feel the sternum rise. And as you exhale, feel it drop. You're giving permission for this part of your body to move. Sternum rises on the inhale. And it softens on the exhale. And that's a big part of finding an abdominal curl without getting into too much tension in the neck. So bring your hands to behind your head now. Take a breath and you can feel your sternum rise. And then as you exhale, soften that sternum and let the softening of that curl you up. And then lower all the way down as you breathe in. Exhale, sternum softens first and then you curl up. And come down. So sequence of events. You've got the exhale, then the sternum softens, then you curl up. So there's sort of like a millisecond of lag before you come up. Breath, sternum falls, you curl. This is meant to encourage you to bend a little bit more from your thoracic spine. Now I didn't specify, but as you continue along here, notice where your low back is. Is it in that neutral place? Is it in that slightly curdled place where it might be in contact with the mat? Is it somewhere in between? And once you've observed where that is, check in if it feels okay. If it feels good, and you feel maybe a little bit of effort in your abdominals, not a ton, we're not working that hard, but a little bit, then you're in a good place. If you're not feeling a lot of abs, or if you're not liking the way your low back feels right now, explore that little bit of a curled position we started with. You're going to scoop your abs in, slightly flatten the low back to the mat, and maintain that subtle flatness as you curl up and down. Now in my body, this feels like a heck of a lot more work. I feel better connected into my abs. It feels like the lower fibers are firing a little bit more. That's just me though. You may feel something completely different. And the correct position to be in is the one that lets you feel connected strongly. Go for 4. Gentle curl up on your 3. Head is heavy in the hands. Fingertips are interlaced to support the weight of the skull. And we'll take just one final one and lower all the way down. Good. From there, roll onto your left-hand side, please. Bend your knees up so that they're comfortably placed. And then, if you can, both arms reach forward. Now that means the head drops down to the mat. If that's not comfortable for you, you can bend your bottom arm up, or you can grab a pillow, place it underneath so you're boosted up. The point is that I'd like there to be no tension in the neck whatsoever. Once you've got a place where your neck feels good, take the right arm up to the ceiling, and then you'll follow those reaching right fingertips with your eyes as you twist and rotate the upper body. And then bring the arm all the way back, and track it back till it's parallel to the floor. Sometimes there's a lot of excitement in the pec stretch or the shoulder opening here, and that's kind of like icing on the cake. I'd like you to focus on the thoracic spine, that same part of the spine that we were cueing to in the ab prep, and feeling it rotate and move, freeing up those upper backs. Just one last one. And bring that all the way back. Place the right hand on the mat in front of you. Just press yourself all the way up, and you can swing your legs around to the other side. So that thoracic spine, again, is the upper portion of the back, the parts of the spinal column that connect into your rib cage. So as you come up, maybe you envision the rib cage rotating around the axis of the spinal column, and then breathe it all the way back. I like an inhale of the arm up. And then as you exhale, there could be a hint of that softening in the sternum to take you deeper into the twist. And even though we're just doing 4 each side, you should notice that in each one, you end up getting a little further into the shape. One last one. Your top left hip reasonably still and stable so that it doesn't open up, but you actually rotate it a little bit forward to deepen the spiral, and then come all the way back. Good. Place that left hand on the mat, push yourself all the way up, and then I'd like you to adjust to a 4-point kneel. In this position, set yourself up so you have long neutral curves in your spine. So you're not starting rounded up, nor are you collapsing into the low back, but they'd be roughly equivalent to the curves you'd have if you were standing. Now from here, let the abdominal wall drop completely without changing your low back. And then, with the same cueing we had on the back where you gather muscularly up between the hip bones, scoop the contents of the low abdominal wall up. I'm wearing a baggy shirt, it's hard to see, but I'm going to let everything drop, and then gather everything back up. And as everything drops, And then as everything gathers back up, my low back curves are left unchanged. So you're drawing up and then releasing. One last one, maybe exhale as you lift those guts up. So now that you've found that deep, deep powerhouse support in this new position, check in with your shoulders. They should feel broad on your back. Some teachers call this next thing flossing the shoulders. I'd like you to let your shoulder blades pinch together and then widen them apart, almost like you're pressing the curves of the spine up to the ceiling. Allow the curves of the spine to drop between the blades and then come up. This is called protraction and retraction in the shoulders. And while you're doing that, and it should feel fairly good, I'd like you to keep your spinal curves reasonably consistent. I've got a micro bend in my elbows. I feel muscularly engaged through the arms. And we'll do just one more. Both of these places are extremes, and they're usually deemed default. We don't want to live there. So come to between those two extremes. The shoulder blade should feel flat on your back. And we're going to start with just a right leg. Slide it behind you, but keep the toe on the floor. And then barely lift it off, no higher than parallel to the floor. Lower those toes, come back in. Left leg slides away, left foot stays on. Then lift it, lower it, and bring it back in. Do that again with the legs. Slide away. As the leg lifts, lift your abs up at the same time. Lower and come in. Maybe even lift the abs up before you lift the leg, so that you know you're supported in your midsection and your low back isn't going to be disturbed. Now if that feels like a challenge, stay there. If not, add on. Right leg slides away, left arm reaches. Lift them up, maybe to parallel to the floor, come down and breathe them in. Right arm, left leg. Pick the abs up, pick the limbs up, bring it back, stay lifted as you recover. And as you continue alternating sides, take it slow and measured, trying to keep engaged the whole time. So you never lose focus, creating that tone across your hip bones. We'll do two more here. Coming back in. Often it's an inhale on the reach and an exhale, come back in. Having found that, walk your two knees together, drop your bum towards your heels, take a nice stretch here. Whether you're using the term core or Joseph Pilates' term powerhouse, it is a collective term for a whole bunch of different muscle groups. Some of us are conditioned to use our back muscles more than the abdominals in the front. And it's not the worst strategy in the world, but if you can, think more tone in the front, more support from the front, and allowing those back muscles, which are often a little bit overworked, just to relax down. I'll get you to come onto your stomach. Just briefly though, remind yourself of that inhale, exhale, the rise and fall of your sternum, in that we'll play with that in this new alignment. You can come down onto your stomach, separate your legs by about mat distance, and bring your hands to underneath your forehead. Take a breath in. Your upper back will rise a little with the inhale, and then as you exhale, feel that upper back soften down into the mat. Once you've found some initial softness, lift your abdominals up like crazy. You might even create a little bit of space, and hopefully lengthen the low back out, a little bit like we did with those subtle curls at the beginning. Having found those components as your starting postural adjustments, inhale to lift your upper back up slightly, and lower down. Because we're working in a foundational world, don't come too high. Keep it long, low, and reaching. Inhaling on the rise, exhaling on the lower. You're broad across the shoulder blades. You have not retracted them. And you're keeping the lift, just like we did in the 4-point kneel. Just two more. If you're feeling a little bit of work in the upper back, fantastic. Mid back, okay. Low back, might be happening a little, but try and keep enough lift of navel to spine so there's not a ton of compression there. Last one, lower all the way down with the knees wide, pressure bum back over your heels again. Just a single breath there. And then roll up through your spine. Next couple of movements you can do seated, cross-legged, which I'll do because if I stand up, the video cuts my head off. You can also do them standing or seated on a chair if that's a little bit more comfortable for you. Let your arms dangle, and then shrug your shoulders up high by your ears, and just allow them to fall. And then just that again. and down, and up, and down. This is elevation and depression. You elevate them up, and then you let them fall. One last one, and come down. Now, there is a possibility, especially people who've done a lot of physical training with group classes and whatnot, where you've been told to drop your shoulders a lot. People do this. Ooh, they force them down. Tension's created in the neck, the lats come on too hard, the shoulders roll forward. It's a little bit too much. So yes, of course, we don't want to have them living up here, but just let them have their weight. You don't need to force them down or overly engage. Having taken that, breathe your arms forward, palms down. Bend your right elbow, twist, and look over your right shoulder, and then come all the way back up. Now if you're seated, either cross-legged as I am or on a chair, just don't let your lower half move. This is harder if you're standing. Your pelvis is going to want to twist or swizzle. Try and keep steady so that the rotation happens above the waistline. We'll just do one more each side, rotating and trying to move that thoracic spine as we did before, and the last one, and come back. From here, take your arms out to the side, slide them along the fingertips, come up to make a V shape, and then let them come back down. Just two more there. Get wide across your upper back and across the front of the chest. Last one, and come down. From here, just your right arm comes up. Come up and over. If you're seated, you're going to put a little weight into the left hand as I am. If not, just reach long. And come all the way back, lower the arm. If you're standing, reach up, get tall, and then just take a long diagonal reach. And come back up. Key thing, regardless of your starting position, is that as you go up first, then you go over. And come back. Last one with your left arm, side bend over. And come back up. Let the hands rest wherever you wish. Nod your chin to your chest. Roll one ear to one shoulder and a nice big circle of your head for 3. Whatever feels good here for 2. And 1. Finish chin to chest and reverse around. 2. And 3. End with your head back up on the spine, and you're done with those. There are a lot of other foundational exercises, a lot of other essential skill sets, but there was a number of things in these exercises which we've just done, which you will see in a whole bunch of other repertoire. So file it away, keep playing with them. They're also a great warm-up before you do go into any other form of athletic sort of endeavor. Have a great rest of your day.